Have you ever wondered what goes on behind the scenes in the sports world as everything kicks off in the bubble in Orlando with Major League Soccer and the NBA and Major League Baseball getting first pitch and football is just a few short weeks away? Yep, sports is here, but there's a lot of nuts and bolts that go on. And we have an amazing guest here today to kind of peek behind the curtains like the Wizard of Oz to find out and teach us what goes on in the sports world behind the curtain. Find out more coming up next. Mitchell, and this is To The Point. And of course, what do I love talking about? Sports. And what are we talking about today? Sports. We're going to talk about the nuts and bolts, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. I know most people out there, well, if you're not a millennial, might not reference the movie, but Jerry Maguire, millennials, Gen Zers, Google it, Tom Cruise. He looks the same, yes, in the 90s as he does today. We don't know why, the beauty of having a good plastic surgeon, I will guess. But not everything is the sexiness of what you see on Jerry Maguire. I know we've had some amazing guests on our show. David Melsner's been on here with his amazing background, working as an agent in his amazing firm. But today's guest has an amazing background. He's a former agent, he still is an agent, and for the NFL Players Association, different folks that play in the NFL. But to get to some behind the scenes of what's really going on in the sports world today. As you guys know, sports has been shut down until July due to COVID-19. It's still very go, touch and go as we go, even as we record this. There's always questions on what's going to happen with sports. We're seeing issues coming out with the NBA, with the NBA bubble. It's causing some hinky behavior down there because people actually, there's a phone number. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but there's a phone number in the NBA that these players can call, or anybody there can actually report if they see something. Well, obviously, unfortunately, if you play in the NBA and you're not like 6'2", 6'3", where you can blend in with like the rest of us, so the great Spud Webb would blend in just fine. But if you're a 7-footer, and well, most NBA guys are 6'5", 6'6", they're all gigantic people, they're going to stick out in a crowd. And of course, they've already started ratting each other out. We had a couple athletes already get in trouble for getting food delivery and going beyond the border. And they're taking this quarantine pretty, they're there in Disney for a long time. Hey, Disney's the one that's like, we love it, stay here longer. But of course, that's what we're dealing with. So let's get to the point with today's guest. Let's jump in. Let's have a good sports conversation. And let's get to the point with today's guest.
LifeFlip Media, the voice of the warrior class. Are you a veteran or patriotic business owner, author, musician, public speaker, or entrepreneur? Are you ready to take the next step towards success? Then look no further than LifeFlip Media, the voice of the warrior class. LifeFlip Media is the #1 veteran-owned PR firm in America. We use our mission-oriented approach to secure advertising and media exposure for your business, your brand, and your products. It's time to let LifeFlip Media put you on the cutting edge of success. LifeFlip Media, the voice of the warrior class.
Welcome to the show, Andrew. How you doing, bud?
Oh, great to be here.
Awesome. So sports is finally kicking off. I'm really excited to finally see it on my TV. I know you're a Premier League guy. Your bio has you as a referee, and a little birdie told me that's soccer or football, as they like to say everywhere else in the world except in our country. So it's good to see American sports back on. But there's some financial factors going on in this, and we've heard Major League Baseball reporting some number in the billions that they will lose without fans in the stadium. So how good is this for owners that it's starting again? And how good will it be for fans? Are we going to see a trend in sports change from 0 fans in the stadium? I mean, you talked offline about Premier League. How's it going to look here in the States with it?
Well, so I think the answer depends on what you're really talking about, too, because when you look at the revenue picture of where these leagues make their money, it varies so significantly from one league to another. So when you look at the NFL, for example, majority of the team revenue comes from the broadcast side. So, and that's shared equally amongst all the teams. So the NFL, they'll lose some of the local revenue, but it's not a huge hit across the league. Like you're probably in the area of maybe 30% of revenue. So it's still significant, but it's not catastrophic. For something like baseball, I agree with you. When you look at baseball, like they need people in the stands. That's where they make their money. It's very much local revenue driven, so it's a much bigger hit for those. The NBA is a mixed picture. MLS relies a lot more on the local revenue as well, and as well as the NHL.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you bring up MLS. They were the first to really here in America get back and start playing. They're doing pretty good down in the bubble. We have a couple of folks down there. Obviously, I'm here in Portland, so we have the great Portland Timbers team down there. And when I moved here, I never understood how popular soccer was until you live in a city where soccer is your second most popular sport. And these people are fanatical about it. We went to a game for the first time, and they're popping smoke in the stands and have all the chants that you see on, the Euro side. It's really good. I mean, what I've liked about it as a fan, and I know we're talking the financial side of it, but I think TV is really taking advantage of this time to really give us cool camera angles and make it more interactive for us. What I love about Major League Soccer is on both end zones, or where both goals are, but where they're out there in a football stadium, so I'm calling them goals. On both sides, they have fans, like Zoom calls going on where you can watch. I think that's cool because it makes it interactive and you feel like you're part of it. I think that'll be interesting. Now, how does it work for the NFL, which is the biggest dog out of all of them, coming back? According to schedules, there's a game tentative, I believe starting August 17th or something like that is one of the first games will be played. How do you think the NFL is going to proceed here? Granted, they have a lot of local market, but it's watching, we all play. I mean, a lot of us watch our fantasy football feeds. So that money will still be there, and I know the NFL gets their cut because they're using names and all that good stuff. But how do you think it's going to affect football as a whole with fans not there? But how many fans does the NFL count on in the stadium, and how many do they count on for watching at home?
As I said before, for the NFL, the real money is on the broadcast side. So for the NFL to play without any fans there, it affects the atmosphere, yeah. Right? Like you love to hear people cheering you on. You score a touchdown. Things like the Lambeau Leap, yeah. and some ceremonial things are definitely going to be different for the players. But once you get past that, if you're zeroed in on the action on the field and the person who's right across the line of scrimmage from you, it's a game like anything else. It's what you're doing is kind of taking all that peripheral atmosphere out of it, and you're boiling it down to just the game again.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the big things that I know I'm part of. I know everybody in my fantasy league. We love sports betting. It is fun. It's fun to do. It makes fantasy a little bit more, especially if you've got that guy in your league who talks a lot of smack. It's fun to have an individual one on where you can go 1 week at each other and throw that money out there. Do you think this will help sports betting? I mean, obviously you have a brand that's as a dog in this hunt. So how do you see sports betting increasing during this time? Because now we're going to be sitting at home. I think it's going to increase, but I'm just a diehard fantasy football person, so I'm like, cool, I'll be betting more because I'll have less to watch, and I'll just watch that.
Right. Well, first of all, from a sports gambling perspective in the U.S., it's still limited to only a handful of states at this point. So you don't have that kind of national effect because there's so many people that are on the outside looking in, at least from a legal gambling point of view. I think it will probably, obviously the industry went through the difficult time of having absolutely nothing going on. Like people were betting on cricket and like dog races halfway around the world just to be able to place wagers on something. So now the fact you have more action coming online, I think you're going to get back to normal. And to the extent that people are still afraid to go out of the house to a casino or other forms of gaming, I think that actually helps the states that have sports gambling, because now you can place those wagers from the comfort of your own couch.
So let's talk about sports gambling and why it's not everywhere. I mean, the states that have it, they're obviously seeing, I mean, there's revenue involved, just like cannabis. Cannabis is, where it's legal, those folks are seeing money. I know I live on the West Coast, so our entire coast is legal, from the tip of Washington all the way to right before you get to Tijuana. Well, I think in Tijuana anything's legal, but in our country, everything, you know, on this side it's legal. But I know sports gambling also, California it's there. I know here in Oregon it's there. And I believe Washington. I'm not going to quote Washington for not knowing for a fact. I wouldn't be shocked because sports is popular around here. What is it going to take to get sports gambling everywhere? I mean, a lot of people gamble. Let's just face it. We wouldn't have Las Vegas and in New Jersey if we didn't have gambling. We already all know that. And a lot of people can, I mean, okay, I'm going to confess my crimes here. I've actually gambled online before it was even a thing to do, out of a site, third party, offshore. But hey, I was learning about parlays. I really like sport. I like football. But now, you know, we have FanDuel and DraftKings, these great sites that are, you know, sponsoring games now. So when do you think we'll see it grow across the country to be more accepted as what people are, you know, because people are doing it. They're going to do it either way. Why don't states want to make revenue off of that?
Well, they do. And if you look at the landscape, like we're less than 2 years in from the Supreme Court decision still, right? And the wheels of government do work slowly, particularly when there's some controversy. And you have some states like Utah, for example, where it's a very conservative state. You have moral objections to gambling and just the general lottery. I believe Utah is the only state that still doesn't have a statewide lottery. So in a handful of states, you're going to have that type of pressure. In other places, it's a matter of how you split the pie, right? And it's the fights that are going on internally of deciding who is actually going to make the money. Like you hear a lot when the Supreme Court decision first came down, you saw a lot of interest in something called integrity fees. And what the leagues were kind of lobbying for at that point was to say, look, if you're going to legalize sports gambling, you're going to make our job harder to protect the integrity of the game. Therefore, we need to get paid more money because we now have to patrol the league. The counter argument to that was, well, you're supposed to be doing that anyway, and how is that going to be different? It should be easier, not harder, if it's going to be out in the open. So a lot of states, you've had that wrangling over integrity fees, whether they should be allowed, whether they shouldn't. In states like West Virginia, for example, they imposed an integrity fee, but they said that that money is going to go to the university, West Virginia University and Marshall. They're two Division I schools, so that it becomes an extra revenue source for those schools, right? So I think the bigger questions, if it's not a moral objection, it's who's going to get paid in the process.
Shocking, everything in sports. We learned about that with Major League Baseball, why they were trying to go back for COVID-19. We had players versus owners who were all fighting over lots of money. Thank God they decided on it, but I think that's a mess for a later story. I don't think that story's over by any means. I just think they needed to go back and play, period. And I think once the season's over, there's going to be some truth come out of that story. They didn't play very well. They didn't play nice together in the pool. They're only doing 50 games. It's a mess. I don't even know how they're doing it. I think the worst thing about baseball, honestly, non-business side, is we don't get to see a ton of games with the Astros being harassed for cheating, which I, as a Yankee fan, was looking forward to. I know my Dodger friends were also looking forward to the same thing. So
for the Astros, it's probably the best thing that can happen is that no fans in the stands.
No fans in the stands, and I mean their suspensions are next to nothing if you think about it. AJ Hinch, I mean, he's like, cool. I had to sit on the beach for a year. Cool, I'm cool. I'll be right back next year. He'll get picked up. I mean, he's a good manager. Cheats, but he's a good manager. So here's the interesting thing. A lot of people are seeing sports come back, and they don't know what the future holds in it. But my question for you is, we have a lot of college athletes, and you with your background as being an agent, especially with NFL guys, how do you see this affecting these folks with their future, right? A lot of players are looking. College football hasn't said for sure we're going back. All some conferences have said is that they're going to stay within conference and not have out-of-conference games. But they still haven't said that's if. It's kind of like my kids going back to school. Same sentence was used. If we can do it, we will. Well, you and I both know in the sports world these guys should be training soon. The NFL's usually about ready to hit training camp in the next 2 weeks. 14 days is usually when they're already there. So when do you think they make the point to do this, and how does it affect our college athletes? Because a lot of these kids, they could go to play in the NFL. They want that opportunity, but they're going to sit. How do you see that kind of hurting college football, who's already been slapped by no Sweet 16, no March Madness, none of the things they want?
And it'll be interesting to watch. So first of all, for the pro leagues, the advantage that they have is you have collective bargaining. So you actually have teams and players sitting down together and saying, what are the rules of the road going to be? And for better or worse, baseball, one of the reasons why it took so long is that contention and the power of the union to really press their issue really kind of took it as far as they could. In college, you don't really have that system, and even the NCAA has kind of backed off it and said, we're going to leave it up to the conferences to decide what to do, because there's a big, even if you look at just college football, there's a big discrepancy between the Big Ten and, let's say, the Sun Belt Conference. The resources that a Big Ten or even SEC is going to have can make testing widely available to student athletes. Different schools have kids coming on campus, others are going online. So you have a myriad all across the league. So you can be playing one school that has all of these protocols in place against a non-conference school that has none of it in place. And when you have a wide receiver and a cornerback lined up against each other, it's got to be going through their mind and say, hey, not only am I worried about pulling a hamstring and getting hurt, but if this guy breathes on me, I might come down with coronavirus, right? It's just something that you would never think would enter a player's mind, but it's reality, and it's what we're all living with today.
So, I mean, how do you think this changes the landscape of professional sports? I mean, because at the top level, it's there. I know, and I have a question to follow up with on college, but I really think about pro sports. It's something that we're all very keen on, we love, but you bring up the breathing on each other. And I know the NFL, a lot of the players got very vocal when the NFL released the post-game or rules of the game, which included, and I agree with the players, they can't do the jersey trades, but like Richard Sherman said, I loved it. He's like, so we could cover each other for 2 hours and tackle and knock the snot out of each other, but a 2-second exchange of jerseys is going to end the world and you're going to fine us for it. So how do you see just all sports changing, especially in the professional? Do you see that we're going to have do you think fans will ever enter a stadium again?
It'll happen. There was a NASCAR event just the other night where you had 20,000 fans there. So in a 100,000 seat stadium to have 20,000 fans, it's a large number of people, but it's spread out so much that you had the social distancing there. I think you're going to see a lot more of that. The NFL is the first league that's really looking to bring back fans, and we'll see what plays out in 6 weeks, whether that actually happens or not. But that's the reality. I mean, teams have a responsibility to protect the fans coming in, And it's really bad PR to hear that, 1,000 people who are in the stadium came down with coronavirus. And that's what the leagues are trying to prevent. When you look at the measures they're taking for their actual players, there's a variety of strategies that have been employed. But for something like the NBA, I think it's a lot easier. You have 15 players per team, so it's not a huge population. You can stick them all in one location, and this bubble strategy is something that's kind of medically recommended by the CDC and other groups. So all the leagues have been working very closely with them. That's really hard to do in the NFL. When you think about training camps, you have 90 players per team that are coming in. So just multiply that by 32 teams, and you're talking about a small army, right? You can't stick unless you take over a small city. You really can't accommodate that. So that's a big issue that the NFL is going to have right off the bat. Secondly, is the personalities and the mentality of the players. Is the more people you have involved, you're going to get those that are willing to comply. You're going to get those conscious objectors too, and your risk level just goes up immensely based on the number of people you have involved. So for things, MLS is kind of going with a similar bubble strategy, ironically at the same place the NBA is. The NHL, they're kind of using the two cities in Canada approach. So similar concept, it's a little bit less regulated than the NBA is. So it'll be interesting to watch. The NFL is the one that I think has the hardest issue to contend with. Their measures, if you think about football, though, it's the only sport that you typically have your head covered in most of the games. So a lot of players already wear visors. So the face shield that they introduced, like any equipment change, players are going to love it or hate it. So it'll be interesting to see how those measures play out. But they're trying to take as many steps as they can to get games on the field. It'll be a matter of figuring out whether they're enough.
Awesome. So here's my final one for you. As a season ticket holder, this is my question, because I know at the end of the day, those are the folks that the leagues love, are the folks that they have day in, day out, that fill seats guaranteed, especially NBA, NHL. We get a ton of, even Major League Baseball, we have a ton of games. Splitting an 82-game season as an NBA guy, it's great. 41 games at home, plus catch some on the road when I get to go to New York, get to go to MSG and watch my team play, hopefully beat the Knicks. We should. We lost this year and embarrassed ourselves, but at least we beat them at home. But how do you see that changing? I mean, obviously they want to get fans in, but then it becomes this whole mechanism, because I've heard from folks that are season ticket holders in the NFL, it's like a lottery system. It's very difficult because you have people who are like, we're still making payments on our tickets. People, you could do that in the NBA. I know people who are doing that, continuing on for the next season. How do you see teams, since that's a revenue generator for sure, how do you see teams working on this? Like, how do they make it fair? Is it just going to be the floor seat folks are guaranteed theirs, and those, as you get higher up in the rings of a stadium or an arena? I mean, how are they going to work that to keep it fair?
Well, the season tickets are the blood of any franchise. So there's going to be a pecking order financially first, right? So your floor seat people will probably have the first opportunity to lock in tickets. But what a lot of teams are doing, because they're trying to feel out kind of what this all means to them too. So I know, for example, in the New York area, the Jets put a message out to season ticket holders, and they gave season ticket holders the option to opt out. So if you're not comfortable coming to the stadium, and I think you're going to see that in a lot of locations where you're just going to have a natural attrition of season tickets, at least on a 1-year period, right? Where people will say, I'll sit this year out, let's see how this plays out, but I don't want to give up my place in line, because some teams have waiting lists for season tickets, or it's very hard to get them. people aren't going to want to voluntarily give them up, but they'll gladly pause if they have that opportunity. So I think that's a very effective strategy for teams to use, because that helps you reduce the numbers right off the bat. So the people aren't going away. They feel like the message is being heard, but you're reducing the risk and you're making it easier for the teams, because if now I have to worry about half of the season ticket holders I have, that makes it a lot easier for me to figure out who's going to get them.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're right on that, Andrew. And I have to give a shout out to the ownership of a lot of teams that I've heard from, and even the ones that we're season ticket holder for. We've been treated like gold. They have been very upfront. I know it's frustrating for them. It's hard to communicate. And a lot of us as season ticket holders, my first thing, and still to this day, is our attendant. I love our little attendant, Nancy. I just want to make sure she was taken care of, because, you know, so many older folks work as attendants at a lot of these arenas around the country. I'm concerned about them because they only work, it's a seasonal job, obviously. They depend on rock concerts and games. Well, when there's neither, you want to make sure they're taken care of. So I like a lot of teams, not all, but most have taken care of those folks that can't, you know, they were working for them and they had no choice. Obviously, the staff and those folks are usually taken care of, except for that one team in Boston that their billionaire owner decided, hey, I'm worth billions, but apparently you guys don't need to work. But that's not the point. So you're right on that. So I do want to thank you, Andrew, for joining us today. You've given us amazing insight. I think a lot of people don't understand how the sports world works. And people need to stop for a second and realize money controls everything in the leagues, and all of them. It's all driven off of revenue, including fans. You hit the nail on the head. Lifeblood is season ticket holders. So they have to do that. And I tell people it's like the Super Bowl, but every game now, right? The Super Bowl is controlled by sponsors. The team gets allotment of tickets, and the sponsors have them.
We like to call professional sports the last bastion of capitalism that exists. So very few rules.
So true. So I want to thank you for joining us today, Andrew. We'd love to have you back as the season gets started. We can't wait. Fingers crossed we get an NFL season here, and we'll be out there and have you back on. I'd like to talk about what you do at Rutgers, because I think that's interesting too. We just have so much to talk about with sports coming back. So thank you so much for joining us, and have yourself a great week.
All right. You too. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode of To The Point. As always, I'm your host, Eric Mitchell, and we thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, if you know someone that we should be interviewing on our show, or you'd like to be a guest on our show, feel free to email us at hello@tothepointtv.com. We'd love to have you as a guest on our show. Please go ahead and feel free to follow us on Twitter at To The Point TV. We'd love to see you on Twitter. Also, make sure to follow us on Instagram. We're huge fans of Instagram here at To The Point. So give us a follow at To The Point, and a like and a share so you can see the guests that are coming up on IG. And that is at To The Point TV. It's not .com. It's just at To The Point TV. So confusing with all these names taken. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, you know what we're going to get ready to go. But before you do that, if you're a fan of Facebook and you spend a lot of time on there, go give our Facebook page a like and a follow and share it with your friends. And keep in mind, if you can't get to your YouTube, you can always watch us live at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern weekdays. We appreciate to see you there. And as always, my favorite peeps, you're here on the YouTube, and we love you here on YouTube. So make sure that you drop in and you can see every episode and never miss an episode, right? Because if you smash that subscribe button, give it a like, and flick that bell, you flick that bell, you get notified before everyone else when we drop the latest episode or subscription. And as a reminder, all of our segments and shows go live weekdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, so you will be the first to catch them, and you don't want to miss them. Go check out our library. They are broken down by hashtags, so you will never miss an episode. On behalf of our entire team here at To The Point, we want to thank you for tuning in, because if it wasn't for viewers like you, we wouldn't have a show. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Eric Mitchell. Be safe, be strong, be smart, and God bless America.
Let's get to the point.